good morning, afternoon, or evening, and welcome to the Bloody Disgusting Network. The following show is just horrifying. Beware.
My friendship to all of you precludes my involvement with any one of you. But if you wanna make love, then I do too, and I'll be right there behind you. All in the name of oh, all in the name of oh, all in the name of oh.
Greetings, Bango Skanks. This is the second part of our coverage of the Dark Tower, the final book in King's main Dark Tower saga. Fear not, we'll get to Wind Through the Keyhole soon enough. If you haven't listened to the first episode yet, I'd recommend you do that. Many hours of great analysis, if I do say so. If you have listened to it, grip some sandalwood and lean in. Our journey, one of many, enters its final stretch.
I'm gonna have to kill this fucking clown. Welcome to the Losers Club, asshole!
All right, here in Heroes and Villains, we talk about characters and what we like, what we don't. And I'm going to start this one off because we got to talk about Mordred. Mordred is the spider spawn of Susanna / Mia / Crimson King / Roland. And it's so wild because I guess Mordred always like held a certain place in my head that he was a much bigger character. And that he popped up even earlier in the books, but he is only in this book, and he is vaunted to such a degree. And I think and I think, we talk about the pathetic nature, right? Of the characters. And so I think the decision to have Mordred kill Randall Flagg in the beginning is meant to make the pathetic quality of the downfall hit that much harder. But yeah, I just want to talk a little bit about Mordred and Crimson King, aka Santa Claus, because I just thought it was so funny that he describes him as looking like Santa Claus.
Made me think of Crashmore.
Yes, Crashmore.
I've fucking seen it.
But yeah, like I said, I recall being relatively disappointed by these characters on my first read, and I still find them somewhat underwhelming, but I appreciated them both a lot more because I think it's really tied up in a lot of the themes. I talked a little, we talked about the breaker quality and the way that King writes them as sort of these workers that sort of exist under the thumb of a larger corporate entity and are contributing to who are comfortable contributing to the decline because, they've been situated in such a way that at least they're comfortable and they don't have to think about the consequences of their actions. That's very much, again, how Dinky operates in Everything's Eventual, where he's more or less committing assassinations, but it's through the computer. So he doesn't see what's actually happening. And that to me is like a really, maybe blunt, but smart comment on, a lot of post-capitalism. But but the Crimson King, I guess, to me makes sense when you consider that so much of the decline in our country comes from, the majority of our institutions being run by sort of crazy gibbering fools who are so rich and so insulated from humanity that they've come to think of themselves as gods. They're not particularly, like, when you think about the Crimson King, you're like, what is he good at? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he's a ruler, but I don't even... does he have powers? You know what I mean? It's like what we know about him is that he can amass an army, and that's something, but he's basically just throwing bombs at the end, right? And he's kind of an idiot. Like, he got trapped on the balcony.
Oh, yeah. He basically devolves into like Donkey Kong throwing barrels at the end. Right?
Yes,
like,
exactly.
There's not like a clearness. And when they're like, no, you don't understand. He made them drink rat poison. It's like, yeah, but actually, like, Cersei Lannister tortured someone for years. You're really evil. Like, I want to see that. But I think also the big bads historically, like whether it's Sauron or some of these other characters, even like the devil in the Bible, you don't actually get as many of the sick details that I guess people like us sometimes crave. We're like, oh, I want to hear the depravity of this evil. But I guess I liked him a little more this time around but I still feel like I'm like, yeah, we didn't get as much. Like, we got more Mordred than Crimson King for my taste,
Sure. And Mordred, to me, I think I kind of had this revelation early on, and it made me laugh, but it also really tracks, which is that Mordred is kind of a fail son. And that sort of framing of that character kind of opened up some doors for me. like the children of the rich and powerful are often raised to think in the way that Mordred thinks, which is that, I'm going to read this section, the way Mordred thinks about himself, right? The foretold joining of Prim and Am, of Gadosh and Godash, of Gan and Gilead, in a way like Jesus Christ, but in a way purer than Jesus Christ. But Mordred is both like handed great power, but is also eternally alone, treated only as a successor. So like on page 196, the only words that really go through his mind when he's in spider mode is eating, roaming, raping, killing. Like he consumes, but he has no desire to actually contribute. Like he is raised in such a way where he doesn't believe in anything except consumption. And so Mordred, there's this quote, Mordred feels no interest in his red father's plans or ambitions. What he most truly enjoys, he's discovering, is the bitter loneliness of outside, of watching with the cold interest of a child watching life and death and war and peace through the glass wall of the ant farm on his bureau. And this reminds me in some ways of like Under the Dome, right? Like the first time we meet Junior in Under the Dome, he's burning ants with a magnifying glass, right? And that ends up being kind of a larger metaphor for that whole book. And I think King is interested in that sort of idea of an evil that is not banal, but necessarily, but has no actual belief or desire to do anything, but would rather capitalize and consume when the timing is right, only to benefit himself. So like, I still wish Flag was this book's big bad, honestly, but I still love Mordred casually gobbling him up because in a way it shows a sort of general disregard for the past and history or even long-term thinking. Like he'll gobble up those who paved the way for him because nothing is sacred. Like it's like even the enemy, the villains who sort of, serve his dad. And like, I think he knows that Flag is like going to turn on him, but there is this sort of like almost lack of respect for those who came before him that I just find kind of funny. And I love too that it's his own undiscerning appetites that set up his downfall. Like he's not smart, he's not good at anything really but consuming. So he eats a poison horse and marvels at how he's not so godlike after all, Like he says, surely such a creature could never have been meant by Ka to die such a mundane death as the one that now threatened, fever brought on by food poisoning. And so I guess like what I love about them as the big bads, Crimson King and Mordred, is that they're not really good at anything. Like they were born with power, puffed up by the notion that they're gods, squandered it by being so viciously single-minded, leaving so much wreckage behind them, and then they die stupid, meaningless deaths while trying to take the world down with them. And that to me is like, I don't know, it's very apt, I think, in a sort of cynical view of, the corporate interests that run the country and the way generational wealth operates and the way generational power operates, and obviously nepotism, all these things. Like we're basically, and obviously you could point towards the royals and everything as well. When I watched this is a weird pivot, but I know King loves this movie. When I watched People Under the Stairs over Halloween, which I'd never seen before, I love that they kind of get at Everett McGill and Wendy Roby's characters are children of generational wealth, and the way they're described by people in the community is like every generation has gotten crazier, right? Of this like rich family because they have nothing, they don't believe in anything. They're handed everything in life, and all they can do because they have no purpose is just to devolve into insanity. And I feel like that's kind of what's happening here with these characters. I don't know. I think it's funny. Anna, what do you think?
Mordred is Elon.
Yeah, exactly.
And the horse is Twitter.
That is,
it's actually
He's gonna
perfect.
die shitting himself to death.
Like his own hubris, it's like
yeah, and he's
consuming up everything.
Like I was gonna say that Mordred was like Don Jr. since we toyed with the Crimson King being Trump, but I actually think we forget actually both Trump and Elon are themselves kind of fail sons, and that they both have like these father complexes, and they both were born into wealth.
Yep.
Right. Like they've become more wealthy and more powerful. But I think that their single-mindedness and their insecurity is what makes me think of Mordred. And yeah, I really think the Elon comparison is actually, the metaphor works. And well, it works because he is describing the loneliness of the overly privileged.
Yep.
And I do think that we're supposed to feel genuinely sorry for him, right? I mean, he's still evil.
King says that.
But,
he goes, he goes, there was an opportunity here, like in the early going of like right when Mordred's introduced, he's like, there was an opportunity here for Mordred to be something else, and that's where the tragedy is, right? Like he chooses, his hunger is what, his desire to consume is what ultimately consumes him, but there was a moment,
One that saying right there, the desire to consume is what consumes him. I mean, that's what I was getting at earlier. That could be said about Flag, Roland, the people of Blue Heaven. I think that is all very much in line with this. I also wonder too, because King, and I think part why I like Mordred, maybe it's because we just had a baby. He emphasizes too that like he is sort of weakened by his age and his lack of like he almost knows he's supposed to be smarter and better, but he can't quite do it. Like there's that part in the beginning where they talk about how he's frustrated that he can't even get into the chair by himself. And granted, he has aged to being in his 20s, I guess, by the end of it. But by that point, he's so sick already and already starting to like physically deteriorate that I don't think it really matters. Like I wonder what would have happened had he just waited, or if he just encountered Roland in his quartet, once he was in his 20s or something like that. Like maybe he would have been destined for greatness had he hadn't been a literal baby. I don't know. But,
or if his dad had been there, right? Like if Crimson King had been there to raise him.
Yeah.
That's what this is really about. It's absent fathers. Really the breakdown of the nuclear family, I think.
Well, hey, King's father was absent, and
that's right.
I think that,
and look how he turned out.
And I also just like Mordred too, because I do think despite his ultimate patheticness, he is creepy to me in terms of like how he kills. And like I would argue that most of the horrific scenes like cemetery scenes that we'll get to come from Mordred in this novel. So I do like that even though he ends up being somewhat impotent in the long run, he is still capable of short-term death and gruesomeness and destruction that actually makes my skin crawl a little bit. Like I don't know, he just has cool details about him. Like, I like how he kills Flag and then like sleeps in this little web that he made for himself. Like, that's
I love that.
That's a great illustration too in that. So yeah.
And it's funny because in the book, I always, as a Dune head, I wanted more like Dune references in this book, but it is like the concept of an abomination, like a child that's born with knowledge they're not supposed to have yet. Right. So it's like you come out into the world and you think like, oh, that would be an advantage to your smart baby. But I think you ultimately see like they're not mature enough to handle this flood of knowledge that just hits them. And it's like, I haven't earned it, right?
I'll see Boone, because Boone's like starting to crawl right now, and I'll see him like on the mat, and I think he's smart for a baby. Who knows, right? He's a baby, but like I'll watch him, and it's like, okay, he wants to get over there, and I can tell mentally he sees the thing he is after, but he has a physical inhibition in a way because like his legs just don't move that way.
His body can't do that.
And so you'll see him like doing it and he'll get so frustrated. Now, granted, Mordred's doing that on a much larger, more epic scale because it involves the end of the universe. But we see that with him too. It's like, okay, he has this knowledge, but doesn't have the skills to implement it quite yet.
Yeah. So I don't know. I kind of team Mordred in this one, even if I still don't feel like it's the best use of the character. And I almost wish we had a whole book about Mordred. You know what I mean?
I feel like he's like your kind of character. You love like the little prince.
Oh, I love
characters.
Little Prince, like children of privilege who are just like chaotic evil. I love them, and that's why I think I've developed that sort of interest, and that's why I liked it more on this round. But I just still like. I almost wish though the Mordred demise was less. He just gets shot, right? Same with Dandelion. Like they just get shot, and like there's something kind of. I feel like that's where I just like. There's a pathetic quality to it that works, but you're dealing with these creatures that have been built up with, and I guess that's the whole point.
It lacks like a poetry.
They're not as not as mythic as they think they are, but I think still the demise of them feels anticlimactic.
Well, can I?
Go ahead.
We segue Dandelion, is that okay? Just because it still ties
let's
to
talk
Flag.
about Dandelion.
Yeah, and we can jump around too, because like even now I'm like it's so hard not to, but. No, but I was gonna say like because I actually really liked that character, and like I like the idea of kind of like a hackneyed, like Borscht Belt type comedian. Like I think that's very like oddly romantic, and like how his jokes don't even make sense part of the time, but it's just like that idea of that self-feeding laughter. But going just to the Deus Ex Machina, thing. I kind of wish that Flag would have planted. I know I always trip over when I say it, but the but the like the note that was received, I almost wish it was Flag putting that note to like sabotage whether it was Mordred instead of Dandalo or something, or like it would have made more sense to me of like Flag thinking ahead, like, oh, I'll have Roland kill Dandelo, and then that'll be one less opponent between me and the actual tower, something like that.
Instead of Stephen King,
right? Instead of Stephen King writing the note,
yeah.
I think I don't know. It's try to thrust that.
It also too like kind of just I don't know that it's already a loosey goosey concept with how King interacts with this world, right? And I think it's like with that note and then them going to Moses Carver and all, like it's like the more you explain it, you're like no, just you're good. We don't need that.
It's a weird thing for like such a. I don't want to say impactful, but just like such a character to get so much focus sort of at the end of a 7 novel run is very strange. And I would have liked to have heard like more about him. And
like
I was gonna say, I think King has come out and said like, it's related to the It character or Pennywise. It's not him specifically, but the fact that Pennywise lays eggs, this could just be another.
Yeah, I was gonna say, isn't it
species.
supposed to be one of the eggs that at the end of It? Has he confirmed that? I feel like that's.
I read
an
interview. He basically confirmed that they were not the same, but that they could be the same species. So whether it's a child or just a contemporary monster, I don't know.
Because he seems not as powerful as Pennywise at all. I mean, he just gets shot and he's gone.
He also hasn't read in a long time, right?
Yeah, that's true too. That's a good point. He hasn't eaten in a long time, and also he obviously we see the clown visage at the end melting away, and even with the jokes, that's kind of in the realm of Pennywise, and the way he is killing them with laughter, that reminded me of the Rachel Chudd also, right? Like the tying your tongues together and telling riddles till the other one laughs. Like there's this idea of weaponizing laughter through usually pretty bad jokes seems very related to Pennywise as well.
Yeah, and he turns into a psychotic clown at one point.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say I like the character, and I would read a book where he was the main villain, and it would be basically, I guess, a lot like It, but I love It, so why not?
It Junior.
It Junior. For kids. I was disappointed in the way it's utilized here. I think I felt like there was kind of like a lack of rhyme or reason to it, that they're in the middle of this. How did he get there? Although I guess you're saying like it's all loosey goosey about who shows up there. Sometimes they're just people there. That's fine. I do find the trope of the apparently generous host who turns out to be a cannibal or a villain or a murderer, that is terrifying to me. That's one of those fears that maybe hits some people more than others, but that idea, like, and also food turning gross is really
well, it's very much like the Mrs. Kirsch
Kirsch, that's what I thought. I love that.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that scene I have trouble watching. Yes, that scene in particular. So I very down with that, although it was funny at the end when they were like, at least the food was okay. I was like, because the idea that maybe what they were eating was gross, like, again, that's like I have an experience that I won't talk about. There's a reason why it's so right. It hits me so close. I didn't like Dandalo was a weird thing for me. Just the term and the way that Eddie tells them to beware, like
very strange.
It didn't make sense to me in the plot. Like I think it would have been. We didn't need it. Number one, right? Like I think she figures out like the whole like anagram thing. I don't know. You didn't need that.
It's a little played out and like red rum, and I just think as a device, the anagram.
I would have been. I think enjoyed it more with you leave that out. Don't have Eddie warn them. It's just a thing that they encounter, or if it was just kind of a mythic part of the whole thing, that I would have enjoyed. I love when myth becomes true. He could have had it be. This would be very Kingian, actually. Like if it was the Gumdrop House, like the old lady with the Gumdrop House. Is that Hansel and Gretel, or is that a separate story?
Yeah, lady who lives in like the candy house. Which I think Mrs. Kirsch, right? Like that becomes intertwined with Mrs. Kirsch and It. Like she has what's a chocolate house, but like it starts. And I like that. And then what was else I was going to say? The Dos Equis Machina. Were you saying
the
Dos
note.
Equis like the beer?
I was saying Dos Equis because that's what my Klieger kind of said. He said deuce. He said deuce
Deus.
machina.
Douche,
I know, I was trying to
douche
get back to my
machina.
Latin, but
So like Dos Equis machina is what I'm going to say from now. He's making, but the only thing that makes it tolerable for me is that he's pointing out what a shitty device it is.
Yeah, I know, which is the self-awareness and the weird reckoning, I think, with these choices that he's made. So I think what annoys me is too many, like, it's like, because we're talking about whether Dandelo is an offspring of Pennywise or whatever, or if it's the same creature, who knows? Like, I mean, I think ostensibly you mentioned the eggs, and that's something I was reading too, it could be that. But then there's just these like the fact that the robot's name is Stuttering Bill, the fact that it is referenced at the beginning of the book, and then later they say that the pencil pack that Patrick had was bought in a Norwich, Connecticut Woolworths during a back to school sale in August of 1958. 58's when it is set. It's just very strange to me. Like these like direct nods to that, and then also him turning into a psychotic clown. Like, why would Dandelo turn into a psychotic clown if like that was one of Pennywise's guises, you know?
Well, maybe if I'm just now, I should preface, I really like the whole Dandelo sequence quite a bit. I just think it's unnerving. I like it being they've talked about Pennywise's species being the beast that guards the tower. I think all that it works in an unexpected way. All right, but I do agree though with like the anagram thing is just, I mean, talking about Harry Potter, Voldemort, Tom Riddle, right? All the anagram thing is just like such a played out lazy device, I think, in fiction, and we just don't need it. Like they don't need Eddie's help to figure out that there's something off with Dandelo, right? It's very apparent.
And Jake says it too, right? Like
I think they would have. I think Susanna just using the bathroom and realizing.
Oi says it, right? Like, don't they have Oi like try to?
Yeah,
probably.
I think just having Susanna use the bathroom and then realize the thing with Danville is fuck. But. I was going to
say, like, I think even just subbing Flag in for that character, because I enjoyed reading it. I thought it was creepy, but had Flag maybe had Mordred hidden in the basement, or Patrick, and with Flag's plan to eventually wipe out the Crimson King, right? It would have made sense if you just
or if it'd been Flag.
That's what I'm saying. It could have just been Flag or Flag being eaten, and it just, I think maybe this would be King rushing it out, that maybe it was supposed to be a bigger character. It was supposed to tie to it more so, but it does feel like incomplete. It's a fun little like.
Here's
sidetrack or frolic, but it is kind of strange.
I was getting to the 1958 Norwich, Connecticut thing. Maybe it's as simple as just like, you know, Pennywise or it, whatever, was laying eggs the whole time. One of the eggs crawled out and then came out in Connecticut and bought. And then... all right. So this ties into a question I had for you guys, and maybe it's an okay time to start talking about this character too. So, and once again, I don't need it explained, but I don't know. It's almost like too much of a middle ground for me just to not think about it. So we also have Danville, who of course is a character from Insomnia, but he's not the Danville from Insomnia, right? Like he's not. I guess I'm just trying to think about like, well, how literally is all this supposed to be connected to his other books? Like Callahan, for instance, is the idea is that King wrote this book called Salem's Lot. King is the vessel for this fiction coming out, and Callahan is the Callahan that left Salem's Lot, and they are very concrete about that. But then when we hear about Insomnia from the Tet Corporation,
the Tet Corporation.
When we hear about that, right? Am I wrong in that they make it clear that Insomnia was just kind of like a book that was referencing these things like the Crimson King and Danville, but it's not the same as Salem's Lot. It's not the actual versions of them. It's just like King sort of riffing on this stuff that's going through his head. And here's what Danville is actually like. Am I misreading that? Like, no, I don't know.
I think Danville is supposed to be the Danville from that book.
He's like the literal being from like the one transported to Midway.
Yeah, but I think that there is something so unnecessarily complicated about that whole section where they're like, we have a team of people plus psychics who are on a ranch in New Mexico who analyze all of King's work to understand this.
Giving you bought you a magic watch.
Yeah.
I didn't need all. I did not need all that.
I was going to say about the Insomnia, I can't believe we have mentioned this, which is that he gives him the book and then
he doesn't read it.
Just like here.
I was worried about to say, like, that's what's so weird is But I think what you're thinking of, Dan, is they say that there's a lot of red herrings in King's work. I mentioned this earlier. It's the idea of like the anachronistic things in the books that don't really make sense to us, the readers, when we think about the larger Dark Tower realm. That was King giving himself an out and saying, not everything is actually like hard bound to the actual mythos. Because they describe it as the tower was always sort of churning in his head in the background unconsciously. So it would come out in his writing all the time is kind of how they describe it.
Oh, okay.
But then they give him, Anna, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because it's like they literally say, read this book, it'll help you understand it. And he does it. And
he
like,
just gives it to the lady after she has a nice play with him.
Oh,
like,
I can't wait till we get to Pound Cake for that.
Yeah.
I will say I did like, but once again, we don't need to give Roland the book to understand this. I did like the idea of that, the red and white of the Insomnia cover being kind of a signifier of, Roland the White.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah.
There's stuff like that I think is cool. But once again, I don't think we need a whole detour at the Tet Corporation for that. And I did
truly
just
strange.
The more they, like I said, I am totally down for. I actually love the way King presents himself, the real life King, in both this and Song of Susanna. I think he pulls that off very, very impressively. It would be very easy to like get into annoying territory for that. I am all aboard with King is a real life writer. He's in the world that actually matters the most and is this sort of cipher vessel for all this Dark Tower lore that's coming through him, and therefore is an integral part in keeping the tower alive. That's all I need, right? Like that's the basics. That is it. Once we get into like, well, where Danville actually come from, and then the Tet Corporation makes all the King connections actually more confusing for me when I think they're actually pretty clear before that. So, but anyway, how do you guys feel about Danville? Like just as a, I don't mind him as a device, as Deus Ex Machina. I kind of like it, but what about you guys?
So I wondered at times if he was like a twinner. Because it's not Insomnia, but it was a Bag of Bones where there's Kara laughs and then there's Sarah laughs. Yeah, there's these sort of like twinners. Because like I remember in Insomnia that the little bald doctors are like, there's an importance to Patrick, but I don't think we fully got what his powers were. I don't remember him doing like caricatures.
Yeah, he draws, but they don't clarify that that's his like talent.
Yeah, so it is such a strange thing, and it is like King kind of getting out in front of it and being like, "Oh, get ready, because here it comes." Yeah, man, I'm more confused now. I had like notes on like what my opinion was, but after hearing you guys talk, I'm like, yeah, Patrick just seems it's so out of place, and he has such a major impact on the end of the story, right? To just kind of bring him in a little bit, like he would have been a character maybe that book 6 we could have dropped. I know Mordred was born in book 6 or whatever, but it would have been just to give us that a little more time to kind of be with these characters and let them settle in, rather than just kind of like throw them all in at the end. Just seems like a lot.
As somebody who was very much like knowing like that King was promising that these characters like were going to be appearing at some point, I remember reading it the first time and looking like I was, this thick, like, 5 inches into the book, and I had 1 inch left and Patrick came in, and I'm like, that's it? Like, that's all I get with this character? And that's fine. But it's like, it also felt deflating to some degree. I'm like, this is the end, and this character that I've been waiting to meet again for years, ever since Insomnia, because I was a big Insomnia head growing up, like he just shows up in this way. And I feel like, and again, it's one of those instances where I feel like there could have been more stories. Like it didn't need to all happen right in 2004 or whatever. Like we could have eased our way into these characters. And so I don't know, Patrick's fine, but he serves two different purposes, right? One is to actually, use his drawing to help eliminate the Crimson King, and B, to sort of serve as, one of the things that helps break up, or I think like not break up, but I think show Susanna how the true single-mindedness of Roland, and how the way he wants to use this boy to and lead him to what could be his death. I think that those things are interesting and they matter, but Patrick is also a mute, like he can't talk because he got his tongue cut out. So it's a hard character to introduce in the final going. Anna, what do you think?
I just want to make sure that we get in about Patrick, that he also has the obsession of drawing that King tends to put on top of creative processes.
Yeah, that's
right.
true.
Yeah, totally.
Like that and one of the reasons I think he chooses, I think it's alluded to, maybe explicit, one of the reasons he chooses to stay behind kind of has to do with wanting to draw this stuff.
Yeah.
Like wanting that in the real world or that world, he may not have like that importance or may not be able to do the same thing. And it's funny with Patrick, I'm a little more on board for it being like, maybe it's because it's a specific vision.
Yeah.
But he definitely is doing the artist gotta art kind of
Well,
thing.
with his powers too, though, it's like if he can remove and add, like, he draws like something in the background that he moves closer to the foreground. He can remove the blood blister. Couldn't he draw a self-portrait and put a tongue into it, and then he would have a tongue?
Yeah, when you give someone that kind of power, right. This would have to happen if he stayed with us longer, or we stayed with him, which is that you would have rules about his power.
Yeah,
right.
Like maybe Roland does we'll skip the Dark Tower for now. I'm going to take this guy on the road because I could do anything I want.
Why can't he
draw Roland in the Dark Tower?
Yeah,
or
draw Oi coming back. Draw Oi.
Yeah, draw Oi coming back. Damn it. Yeah.
I will say too. I
ahead.
like that. I do like that Roland, the last companion with Roland, is someone who wasn't part of his quartet. I just think that speaks to the themes of the book. He's this is sort of who you're left with, is this weird random kid who can draw well. It feels right to me.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting. And then I think it points to the isolation and the loneliness, the idea that the people closest to you've alienated all of them, or basically forsook them on this journey. Anna, what did you want to say about Susanna in the last part of this book? You mentioned at the beginning of the pod that some of it made you mad. Is this where you got mad?
Yeah, I mean, this is if we're going to work in kind of the whole last section of the book, which is the journey after Dandelo, or actually, I think it's before Dandelo, which is when they're going through this terrible journey where they're cold all the time and they're miserable, and it's kind of all from Susanna's point of view about how miserable she is. I was kind of like, yeah, I'm miserable with you. Why can't this be a couple paragraphs? Why,
you have summed up why I can't read a lot of fantasy fiction, because so much of and I know people are going to probably be mad because I haven't read a ton, but I was reading Wheel of Time and I said, all these people do is walk around. They fucking walk and they're uncomfortable, and that is 80% of the book, and I cannot do this. It is people going from one place to the next place, and they are miserable. And when that was happening, I had this in misery initially, but when that whole sight sequence was happening, I was having horrible flashbacks to reading a lot of fantasy, because I'm like, just get to the fucking place already. I get it sucks, But
you're a big.
I read a fair amount of fantasy, and this didn't. And I don't mind it there. I read the Wheel of Time. I actually was going to mention Patrick. I was going to mention Patrick Rothfuss as another person who I wish fans would lay off of. As much as I love that series and cannot wait for. I mean, I really love to get another book. It's just it could have been so much shorter. It just could have described the misery. And there's actually in my word processor of the gods, there's some of the writing about her being miserable.
It's good.
It's pretty good. But kill your darlings, or just use the darling and then just be like, and that's how it felt for 2 months.
Yeah. No, it's those 2 months through the snow. I felt like at once
they spent all this, have it be the night, have 1 or 2 nights, and be like, and that's the way it was for a while.
Yeah. No, it's I feel like I knew both not enough and too much about that little journey. Yeah, I think summarizing it a lot quicker and being and it went on like that for many wheels of the moon, or something like that. Versus let's just keep
and also just
in.
why can't Patrick Danville draw them just closer to the town?
Or draw a monorail. That's why I like Blaine, because he cut through the wasteland. I was I don't have time for 3 months of journey. Let's go there at the sound.
Really, I agree. And then as far as Susanna goes, if I found her grief, what I was saying earlier is I found her grief about Eddie's death more affecting than Eddie's death. And I think that sometimes it is a more powerful thing to write about. And often also what we are responding to when any character dies, sometimes we're responding to the death, but also good writing about grief is about the aftermath, right? And I think King does a good job with that.
Yeah.
And I believe her grief, and I didn't cry or anything about Eddie dying, but I felt Susanna's pain. when she was
And I
dealing
thought
with
when
this
she
stuff.
told Ted, like, didn't she say, like, don't take this away from me? Like, don't make this easier? Because
Yeah.
she was
Yeah,
like, no, I
that's
want to
great.
live in this and experience this because
Yeah.
it speaks to the power of that love and that relationship. So I remember reading that and being like, man, she is tough to, like, because I might be like, yeah, I'm going to,
A lot of
anesthetize
emotional
myself.
sobriety there.
Yeah, I think that the musings on grief are really important because those are really the things that cause Roland's like glamour to fade. The kind of, the question of, is the Dark Tower what I want, or is it Eddie that I want? Is it Jake? Is it Oy? Is it the community? Like, it really is about the journey, not the destination, right? Which is, it's very
the
much
friends
that
we
kind
made
of
along the way.
Yeah, it is about the friends we made along the way, which I think is what King always understood, and again feeds into that anger at having to write what is actually in the tower. Because I always felt that way. I didn't always feel that way. When I was young, I wanted to see what was in the tower because it was built towards that. But I think as you get older, you realize stuff like the tower, they're always just the MacGuffins, right? They're just the things that we get to at the end, and it really isn't about that. And the most satisfying narratives aren't usually about what's inside the thing. It's about, how you got there. And I think and that's why I think I'm so puzzled by King feeling like he had to write what was inside the tower, because he knows that. And he says that very snottily in that coda, is like, good writers, good readers know that we don't need to go inside the tower. But I'm giving it to you because I know you'll be mad if I don't. And I don't know, I just find that interesting. But I do think that what you're saying about Susanna is really accurate. And it really did make, I think, that anger and that rage she feels towards Roland in the end really potent, and probably the most emotionally invested I was in this whole series, or at least in these revisitations of these last 3 books, which I've always, I think are good, but I wouldn't say have necessarily moved me. I'd say these sections, these moments between Susanna and Roland, where he, I mentioned this earlier, but him getting on his knees before her and basically begging her to come with him is to me like a vulnerability that was earned across 7 books. And that to me was, really fantastic. What were you going to say, Anna?
I said this in Song of Susanna episode, but I think she's my favorite female King character.
She's fantastic.
And
yeah, she's great.
It's probably because we stay with her so long. He develops her more than I think. It's not that he can't have female characters or he's bad at them in general or anything. I do think he struggles with them more than he does with male characters, but fine, that's going to happen. But she seems. He also he even deals with her blackness in a way that I think is more subtle and more earned than a lot of times when he's trying to do right by his Black characters or his minority characters. And maybe it's just because over however many books, 4 books that she's in, he gets to develop her complexity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just like it's not like a character trait that she's Black, right? It's
right.
like it's just one of the many things about her. Anyway, I hadn't really thought about it until we've read these. Of course, I don't know why I would have thought about it without reading them. But yeah, I think of the female characters that I have spent time with, I think she's one that I think she might be one of the top 5 characters I would want to spend time with in the real world.
Yeah.
Like, I think she'd be cool to hang out with.
Yeah.
Mine would be Oy, non-rabid Cujo.
Well,
non-rabid Cujo.
I think Oy definitely. I mean, Oy probably is the most. Yes, Oy is number 1.
I don't know. In
definitely.
Blue Heaven, didn't they talk about he was having sex with like Marilyn Monroe, Madonna? The characters, I guess.
Oy what?
No, Ted or Dinky, one of those guys.
Oh yeah, one of them.
Yeah,
I thought you meant Oy. That'd be funny. Oy's like,
No,
Oy's
that's gross.
It's like it's a Billy Bumbler version of Madonna, just like a Billy Bumbler with like a wig on it.
She's wearing a little leather out, little like bondage.
Like,
Got, like, little cone boobs.
Instead of Vogue.
Yeah.
Any other characters you guys want to talk about?
I think I'm good. I feel like we touched on most of because we touched on Pimley and Finley already, and
I don't know if I have much to say about Ted. I mean, I think Ted and Ted's really great about, I think, being the person who brings dimension to the breakers in general. Oh, There is one other thing I want to say, and that is about the low men, who I think are given more personality in these books in ways that I wish that he had in previous ones. And it really just has to do with these little details about how they like worship the human form, the low men, and also that they think turning things upside down is hilarious.
They almost come off like adult versions of like Minions or some shit, you know?
Yeah.
And I think Ted also, exposition is not always the easiest thing to do, especially in a big genre novel like this. But I feel like with Ted, because we're doing it through the guise of also learning more about his past life that we didn't get insight to, like that we're talking about throwing the spear and everything. I feel like because it's done with that, like it's almost like accomplishing exposition about the world, but also character development. Ted really works for me in this too. And then I feel like Dinky and Shimi, it's just good to see them again, even though Shimi gets dispatched so hastily, you know.
I think I also always see Ted in my mind's eye as like Anthony Hopkins, and I just find him very like
I totally read it in his voice. Yeah, he's so
I think
good
I
in that role.
texted somebody like about thinking of Anthony Hopkins, but in this book, like where he's like doing action stuff, and it's just like it doesn't really work with Anthony Hopkins like portrayal.
Did it
Yeah.
make you guys think of Fleeger and Randall? Because you saw this with me in Transformers. The last night where
Yeah,
he's
the
saying
last night,
"move,
yeah.
move, bitch," where he's like,
he says, "Move,
doing
bitch,
that
get out the way."
awful.
It's,
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think I've a little part of me died when I saw that. Okay, let's move on to our next section, which we call Misery.
She died. She just slipped away.
Slipped away! Slipped away! She didn't just slip away! You did it! 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 You murdered my misery!
Annie!
Here in Misery, we talk about the things that we hated, stuff that drove us crazy. And I had already mentioned the march through the cold of Thunderclap is very tedious, drove me absolutely crazy. The scholars who read King all day, they should have just hired us.
That's like a whole section, I think. And it's not even like that I mind the prose, it's just that as a plot point, I could have done without it, yeah.
It was too much. Like the whole tech corporation, the idea that they were aware and were tracking all of the... Like there was this whole kind of infrastructure built around tracking Stephen King's books and the Dark Tower and what all that meant. It felt very, very goofy in ways that I don't think necessarily benefited the story. What else do you guys have under Misery?
I have just a line, like I said, but honestly, I really do like his actual writing style. I love for the most part in this book. I agree with some of the sections to trim. And this is, I don't know why this popped out to me, this line when I read it. Well, no, I do know why, but it's the page 685 in the first edition. It's the beginning of the Dandel chapter, and it's long after we've already realized what Dandelo is, that he's kind of akin to Pennywise. He's this energy vampire, et cetera. But so this is Susanna figuring it out. So it said, the lines around his eyes and mouth had been erased. Instead of 10 years younger, Joe Collins now looked 20 or even 30 years younger. The son of a bitch. The vampire son of a bitch. I just thought it was like putting such a fine point on what we already know. It just that I think that's just a funny line. That vampire son of a bitch. So that was one that stuck out for me.
Yeah, I was. Go ahead, Anna.
Oh, I this is something. It's actually kind of a big overall thing, but it's easy to forget because every one of us does it too, which is that there's only America in Midworld.
Oh yeah.
There, and it just for some reason became really obvious to me in this book. Although it's true of every, I mean, I can't believe that he doesn't even gesture to the fact that there may be other people in the world.
I think
are worried
he'd be
about
opening
the
up
beams.
too many doors, you know.
Fine. Well, except we're not the only people in existence, you know, like.
But he's a great American novelist.
But it's Midworld. Last time
it's Midworld. It's not called Mid-America.
Mid-America.
Which would be confusing anyway. But it is called Midworld, and also it's funny though. Also, they call it America Side, and that's when I was like, oh yeah, right. It is weirdly just America Side. That's the only place you go. It's either in the middle, which is, you know, purgatory, misery, whatever, or you land somewhere in America, probably the Northeast.
Yeah. Like what happened?
Hey man, write what you know.
What happened to like, we have blue heaven, but where's my blauer Himmel? My German breakers or my Spanish breakers? Where they be at?
A bit of Misery I have. Page 45, this is early, but I just hate when like we have to reckon with rules, you know? And this is like where I say like introducing the rest of the world. Like King already struggles to articulate the rules as they exist. Like it's like the idea of that there's keystone worlds and then other worlds and then, you know, a keystone mid world where the tower is, you know? But like this section, it just drove me crazy. Eddie was thinking that perhaps Susanna could come back to 1977 without them, since she at least hadn't visited it yet. Well, she'd come here Todash, but he didn't think that exactly counted. He supposed she might be barred from 1977 solely on the grounds that she was quartet with him and Roland, or some other grounds. Eddie didn't know. Reading the fine print had never been his strong point. And it's like just don't acknowledge it. Like, don't talk about the things that don't track or don't make sense or
exactly
the holes in your plans. Like
the more you explain, the more you don't explain.
The more you explain,
you know?
it just gets it. I'm like, don't do that. You know, it drives me absolutely nuts.
You guys covered a lot, and I think in the other sections I shared some of mine. And I mean, I do want to talk seriously about Oi's death as misery, just of the emotions. But before that, this is just me bringing my own baggage in, but I've been watching a lot of the Nexium documentaries. So every character being like, and now I'm going to kiss you on the mouth to say goodbye. And I just kept seeing like Keith Raniere as Roland, where it's like, all right, Eddie, I'll see you later. Because they kept giving each other kisses in that documentary. And like, I think you guys recommend Seduced recently, and I've been watching that. So that's.
It's like, oh, my Rolos, my Edos.
Yeah. It's like, oh, let's play volleyball with Roland. Kiss, kiss.
There's, I think I've just a couple. There's one part where it's talking about, I think it's talking about the Loman, whatever they think of close and personal, there's something definitely wrong with them. So it's Humes, an abbreviation that Cantway won't even use. They find it demeaning, like inward or vamp. And and it's just like, you could have just said it's a demeaning word.
Yeah. Whenever I see the Loman, it's like the weasels.
You don't need it. Well, you just don't need to put the N-word in there, you know, like, or, I mean, it's sort of funny to say vamp, but I just found that like a little bit like, no, the N-word part.
One, it's like equating those two is like, yeah, a little cringy too.
Yeah, that seems sort of you know, suspicious. And then I have more about America side. I really didn't like that. And then this is maybe actually fits in with him breaking in, like kind of not like forgetting that he's right, or not being able to forget that he's writing. But he says, the man had been quasi-immortal, a phrase at least as foolish as most unique. Like yeah. why take us out that way?
Yeah.
Like it's just another one of those. I would put it with the other stuff.
Yeah, and that stuff does take me out. I don't know. I just am not a fan of that. Any other misery before we talk about the good stuff? All right, let's talk about word processor of the gods.
And we're gonna make a new rule. Whenever I'm in here, you hear me typing. Whether you don't hear me typing, what the fuck you hear me doing in here, when I'm in here, that means that I am working. That means don't come in. Now, do you think you can handle that?
Yeah.
Fine. Why don't you start right now and get the fuck out of here?
Here in Word Processor of the Gods, we talk about the writing we really liked. And I just want to kick it off by saying I know this is going to sound a little wild, but I think I laughed out loud more at actual jokes in this book than I have in any King book as long as I can remember. I know these are really dumb little jokes, but like when Roland orders a salami sandwich and the way it's spelled, like SALOMMY, salami, like the way he says it, like I could not stop laughing at just the idea of him trying to understand what a poor boy sandwich is and stuff like that. And then there's this joke that is so stupid, but I laughed genuinely when, like, a couple pages later, when Roland has the sandwich for Eddie, he goes, "It's a poor boy sandwich with lots of mayo, whatever that is. I'd want a sauce that didn't look quite so much like cum myself, but may it do you fine." Like, that's such like a thing a bro would say, and like
I love that.
Like that he seems to say.
How do you think how do we think King feels about mayo?
Yeah. He's like, Tabby, it looks like jizz.
With King, and he's like, yeah, I can't have mayo. It reminds me of a hot load on a sandwich. It's just so ridiculous. But so yeah, those were just moments that I actually thought was was kind of genuinely funny, and I don't say that about King stuff too often. What other word processor do you guys have?
I honestly, like, every character death I thought was some of King's most exquisite writing, like, for real. I won't go through all of them, obviously. I do want to read when he's burying Jake. I mean, that whole chapter where he buries Jake just really moved me.
Yeah.
So this is like the final moment in the clearing. He had gone roughly 200 paces from the road on a westerly line. He set Jake down and looked about. He saw 2 rusty beer cans and a few ejected shell casings, probably the leavings of hunters. He tossed them further into the woods so the place would be clean. Then he looked at Jake, wiping away his tears so he could see as clearly as possible. The boy's face was as clean as the clearing. Oi had seen to that, but one of Jake's eyes was still open, giving the boy an evil, winky look that must not be allowed. Roland rolled the lid closed with a finger, and when it sprang back up again like a balky window shade, he thought, he licked the ball of his thumb and rolled the lid shut again. This time it stayed closed. There's just, I think, such great mixing of Roland's emotional state, but also just being procedural and just really very plainly describing what's going on, like almost like Cormac McCarthy a little bit, just like the minute detail of how to bury him. That just really moved me. And then this is the last one I'll share. I mean, I had quite a lot of word processor, but otherwise we could do all day. The last one I wanted to share was when nuts. I wrote down the wrong page for it. But anyway, I was going to talk about the instance where it's King after he's been hit and he has to kind of just like hang out with Brian Smith for a little bit.
Yeah.
And the way he characterizes him of obviously King is being critical of Brian Smith and what led to it, but I think he's really well drawn out and they just are sort of there. And he says like, oh, you're the most famous guy I know. Oh, this is like one of those books. And he talks about the movie Cujo. And then King says, oh, well, in the book, the boy died because Tad dies in Cujo and lives in the book. And there was something, obviously it's commenting on the death of Jake, right? But there was something so distinct and interesting and kind of heartwarming about King just shooting the shit with this guy who just almost killed him about one of his books. And then it also just sort of like subtly commenting on Jake. I don't know. It was real. I wish I had written down the right.
What I liked about
that scene, just
the frustration with King too, because the guy's like, "Oh yeah, I love your movies," and you're like, "He's an author, right?" So it's he's already not in a great position. But then you're like, it's like Michael Jordan, you're a great baseball player. It's like, well, yeah, that's technically correct, but I'm actually not known for that overall.
I think King was really struck
he actually wasn't.
I mean, yeah, but you know what I mean. It's just like
I think he was really
better
struck
than
by
me.
Those conversations he had with Brian Smith, because he's written about that obviously in his essay and on writing about it, and in elsewhere. He's talked about just like the weird how casual Brian Smith was, like eating a candy bar, like talking to King when King was laying there, maybe dying, and he's like, "I'm gonna die talking to this idiot who just hit me." And I say idiot like. No, I don't want to call him an idiot.
No,
like, that's what King thought at the time. And it's like, but it's like, that to me, I think that scrap, that exchange between them was, I think, a weird existential spiritual thing for him because he never stopped thinking about it.
But it goes to the fact that death isn't special.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Like that's the thing you were talking about earlier. It's funny because as much as I complained about the trudge, chapters, both of the things that I really want to add here are from that. This is from 509 in my Kindle. It was both terrible and oddly humbling to realize how easily physical discomfort could take control, expanding like poison gas until it owned all the floor space, took over the entire playing field. Grief, loss, what were those things when you could feel cold on the march, moving in from your fingers, crawling up your motherfucking nose, and moving where? Toward the brain, do it please you, and toward the heart. In the grip of a cold like that, grief and loss were nothing but words. No, not even that, only sound. So much meaningless quack as you sat shuddering under the stars, waiting for a morning that would never come.
I love that. I had that written down too.
Yeah, that's great.
I think it's interesting how that is actually a good description of grief.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's intentional or not. Maybe just one of those things that when you're thinking so much about something, it comes out between the lines, no matter what you're writing.
Right.
But also as someone who gets cold easily, maybe that's why I hated this part so much, because I was like, yes, that's where I get cold. And then,
oh yeah, go ahead.
This is when Roland goes to the tower. The hands pulled him forward regardless. The hands of the tower knew no mercy. They were the hands of Gan, the hands of Ka, and they knew no mercy. He smelled alkali, bitter as tears. The desert beyond the door was white, blinding, waterless, without feature save for the faint, cloudly haze of the mountains which sketched themselves on the horizon. The smell beneath the alkali was that of the devil grass, which brought sweet dreams, nightmares, death. But not for you, gunslinger. Not for you. You darkle, you tink. May I be brutally frank? You go on. And each time you forget the last time. For you, each time is the first time.
Love it.
Yeah,
Fleeger, what do you got?
So actually, Anna, you got a bunch of the ones that I was going to say, but I thought the parallels with the time looping really jumped out to me. And I thought when Suzanne was dreaming about Eddie and she's like, we're going to kiss and sleep together because those things have already happened. Those things have already happened. Ka is a wheel. And it's like, yeah, they happened on this journey, but then it's suggesting this larger parallel, right, of like the looping process, which I thought was fun. And even just like the parallels, sort of the mirroring of the book where Oi's spine gets broken. And that's what happens to David when he fights Court, is that Court breaks the spine.
Oh, you're right.
So, and Oi is less of a weapon. David seems like a little less lovable just because he does seem like more of a weapon, but they both serve that purpose for him. And it parallels obviously him fighting Court. And he does quote Court during that march to the tower where he says like, will you cry off? And that's what Court says to Roland when he approaches him to challenge. He's like, you're not ready, like cry off. And I think just Roland announcing when he got to the tower to like, I mean, the quote was like, I am Roland of Gilead, and I come as myself. You will open to me. And him like sort of thinking of the people along the way, less of a quote, but just more of like him shouting the names and kind of reliving, seeing his life on these different floors, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah. I've got two, and then we'll move on. This was just a creepy section. This is when they're on their long walk also, so good writing. But Susanna, it was a weirding village, and she could not begin to imagine what species of freakish people might have once lived here. The side streets were cobbled, the cottages were narrow and steep-roofed, the doorways thin and abnormally high, as if made for the sort of narrow folk seen in the distorted curves of funhouse mirrors. They were Lovecraft houses, Clark Ashton Smith houses, William Hope Hodgson Borderlands houses, all crammed together under a Lee Brown coy sickle moon, the houses all a tilt and a lean on the hills that grew up gradually around the way they walked. Here and there one had collapsed, and there was a genuine, unpleasantly organic look to these ruins, as if they were torn and rotted flesh instead of ancient boards and glass. Again and again she caught herself seeing dead faces peering at her from some configuration of boards and shadow, faces that seemed to rotate in the rubble and follow their course with terrible zombie eyes. They made her think of the doorkeeper on Dutch Hill, and that made her shiver. I just love these little glimpses we get at a long gone world that existed in this place, like in Thunderclap. It's just very eerie, and that's like an instance where I don't need to know more. I just really love like what's there. And then I have one more here, page 902 of my edition, and this was just kind of broke my heart. And it's Susanna kind of knowing that the end is here. And this is really simple, but it occurred to her again that soon she would see him no more. This man she believed was either a mirage or a demon before she had come to know him, both Antet and Dandin. Eddie was dead, Jake was dead, and soon she would see Roland of Gilead no more. Would he be dead as well? Would she? It's that simple, but for me, I think the knowledge of, after all this time, like looking at someone, and I mean, I think this is, obviously one of the most intimate experiences when someone close to you is passing, is knowing you're never going to see them again. And like being like, this is the end. Like, I think that is a rare emotion for humans. We always think, well, see you later, see you later, see you later. But there's always like a time when that's it. This is the last time I'm seeing somebody. And it's a horrible feeling, and it's a terribly sad one. And I think I just thought that was a nice moment where Susanna has that moment, and she thinks about all of this death that is surrounding her and the idea that she is heading towards some kind of inevitable end. And yeah. Okay. Any other word processor?
That's a good one to end on.
Cool. Cemetery.
What's the bottom of the truth?
Well, sometimes that is better. The person you put up there ain't the person that comes back. It may look like that person, but it ain't that person. Because whatever lives in the ground beyond that cemetery ain't human at all.
Here in the cemetery, we talk about the spooky stuff. Did we think this book was scary? What do you guys think?
I did. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't call it a horror novel because it's not horrific all the way through. But I mean, between Callahan and the vampires, the birth of Mordred, and then his consumption of Mia, Dandelo, the thing under the castle. I feel like there were, for a Dark Tower book, I feel like it probably had the most horror sequences, if that makes sense. And I think that I think King just like leans into his grossness in a way throughout, which is really nice. Like, you know how in Song of Susanna we talk about how we really just get that at the very end with the Dixie Pig.
Yeah.
I feel like with this, it was like we get like 8 Dixie Pig sequences.
Oh,
yeah. So I actually did find it pretty unnerving and scary, and very much from a not so much suspenseful, from just like a disgusting standpoint.
I'll kick it off because I've got a gross
Go ahead, yeah.
one. And this is so disgusting, but this is the walk-in that they meet on the side of Route 7 on page 59 early in the book. The thing that had been trudging along the berm of Route 7 turned toward them, and Eddie let out an involuntary cry of horror. Its eyes bled together above the bridge of its nose, reminding him of a double-yolked egg in a fry pan. A fang depended from one nostril like a bone booger, yet somehow worst of all was the dull green glow that baked out from the creature's face. It was as if its skin had been painted with some sort of thin fluorescent gruel. It's like, good.
I love it, man.
God.
King, we talked about this last time. When King writes sentences like that, I just picture him making like layup after layup, just like he's like, oh, I'm just going and going and going. Like, it's so good. I love it. Yeah.
What else do you guys have in this section?
I find I will just say in general, I appreciate the gross stuff. Have no desire to read it aloud to tell you how much I liked it or how much it freaked me out. Like, once is enough, but I love the podcast. So everyone else goes.
Yeah, good.
No, I think, and I kind of agree. Like, you guys covered a lot of the good ones. This one wasn't as scary to me as book 6, but there were a few sequences, and I think that Dandelo, I think Roland choking on his own laughter is a pretty shocking sight, and especially when they're like, you don't really have such a good sense of humor. So it is this idea of, it's almost like Hank Hill when he starts to laugh at some of Bobby's jokes, and he doesn't quite get why they're funny, but he's like trying to, get there. And I think that's a lot with Roland too, is I don't even know if he got some of the references that were being thrown by the stand-up comedian, but he just can't help it. And that idea of like the laughter feeding itself, it's like Joker with like the Joker, gas, like making people die. And one thing that's kind of a throwaway, but when Susanna sees Eddie and she mentions Ronald Reagan, and he's like, what? Ronald Reagan? He's not the president, the actor. And it is like, putting yourself in that situation of just being like, yeah, that is a kind of a scary thing when you first realize, like, wait, Reagan is the president? And I thought that was kind of a funny reference to Gary Hart too, which is great.
Oh yeah, that made me laugh. On page 595, this is weird, but like I found it very unnerving when Roland can't watch TV. I just thought it was strange, like when he says, it wasn't until he told her that he heard voices, yes, but saw only lines, which made his eyes water, that she realized he was telling her the literal truth. He could not see the pictures on the screen. That to me, because like, I don't know, the concept of somebody who has never seen something like this and what it would do to their eyes who are not adjusted to this. There was just something almost like very disorienting and creepy about that. I also found it creepy, like, this is something I wish that we could have explored more, is that, beneath the Dixie Pig in that, whatever Discordia area, that there was the opportunity for like tourism to watch like 9/11 happen and things of that nature, like where you could travel through these doors and witness the worst events in history and like pay a fee to go watch them. I mean, and that to me doesn't even really sound that far-fetched in this culture, but that to me was a very disturbing kind of concept.
It's like Westworld or something, and they're like, go see Abraham Lincoln get assassinated. And you're like, that is so strange. And
there is a Westworld reference in this book.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but where she talks about the movie, the original movie.
Yeah. What else do you have, Dan?
The problem is like the cemetery and a lot of the book goes on for like 5 pages, some of these sequences. So I'll just read a little bit of Mordred consuming Mia, which I think is just horrifying. Its blood-smeared mouth opened and it hoisted itself, lower legs scrabbling for purchase on its mother's deflating belly, upper ones almost seeming to shadow box at Susanna. It squealed with triumph, and if it had at that moment chosen to attack the other woman who had given it nurture, Susanna Dean would surely have died next to Mia. Instead, it returned to the deflated sack of breast from which it had taken its first suck and tore it off, The sound of its chewing was wet and loose. A moment later, it burrowed into the hole it had made, the white human face disappearing while Mia's was obliterated by the dust boiling out of her deflating head. That is fucking disgusting and like awesome. I mean, it goes on for like 3 more pages, but yeah, and same thing with Mordred eating Flag, where it talks about Flag trying to pick up his own eyes. That there's just a ton of nasty shit. Love it. So yeah, I mean, I could go on and on for all I care, but there's so much nasty shit in this book. I love it.
Yeah, I've got. I just want to read a little bit of that character, Rando Thoughtful, one of the funniest names I've ever read in a book ever. When he gets killed by Mordred, I just really love this. So. And the rooks are eating his eyes. So it was then, as the eager rooks tore Rando Thoughtful's eyes from their living sockets, that the ex-minister of State uttered the rising howl Roland and Susanna heard as they neared the edge of Castletown. The birds who couldn't find a roosting place hung around him in a living thunderhead. They turned him on his levitating heels and carried him toward the changeling, who had now advanced to the center of the bridge and squatted there. The boots and rotted pillow tick coat had been left behind for the nonce on the town side of the bridge. What waited for Cy Thoughtful reared up on its back legs, 4 legs pawing the air, red mark on its hairy belly, all too visible, was Dantet, the little red king. The man floated to his fate, shrieking and eyeless. He thrust his hands out in front of him, making warding off gestures, and the spider's front legs seized one of them, guided it into the bristling maw of its mouth, and bit it off with a candy cane crunch. I love candy cane
great.
crunch. It's like
so
something
specific,
we would have written
though.
a Groupon, Dan.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Oh, like the candy cane crunch of. I've lost my skills. I've lost my lead writing skills now. Yeah.
Any other cemetery before we move on? Cool. All right, let's pop on over into Pound Cake.
After all you've been taught, everyone isn't bad, Mama. Everything isn't a sin.
Come to your closet and pray. Ask to be forgiven.
He's a nice boy, Mom. You like him. You really like him, Mama.
All right. I've got some good pound cake here.
A lot of pound cake in this book.
Yeah,
man.
lots of pound cake.
All right, you go, Daryl.
Who wants to start? Dan, hit us with one.
All right. Hold on. Let me pull up my little list here. Okay, so I'm going to go. This whole section is a little bit of pound cake, but well, no, you know what? I know what I'm going to start with because I remembered this passage even from when I read this book the first time. We haven't talked about these characters yet, but the children of Rod, which are kind of these like imbecilic servants of the Blue Heaven facility. What's the one's name that they have him like plant the bombs and Pimley's,
I don't remember. I don't remember
his name, but this is also one of the most disgusting pages I've ever read from King at all. So he's just planted this bomb and he's done it in this waste basket. Well, he's done it in a waste basket. Yeah. And it is so gross. And so this, not only this guy like planted this bomb, he's now taking the used tissues to his love. Sorry, because here we go. Ted told him to go far and far. This is on page 349, by the way. Once his errand was done, and if he heard shooting, Halis, that's his name, was to hide until it was over. And he would. Oh yes, Nerdune. Hadn't he done what Roland of Gilead asked him? The first of the humming balls was now in Feveril, one of the dorms, 2 more in Damley House. Blah blah blah. I'm gonna skip ahead a minute. So Halis didn't know what the humming balls did, nor wanted to know. He would go away, possibly with his friend Garma, if he could find her. If shooting started, they would hide in a deep hole, and he would share his tissues with her. Some had nothing on them but bits of shaving soap, but there were wet snots and big boogies in some of the others. He could smell their enticing aroma even now. He would save the biggest of the latter, the one with the jellied blood in it, for Garma, and she might let him pokey poke. Halis walked faster, smiling at the prospect of going pokey poke with Garma. So not only are we having essentially like a slow mutant going to eat boogers and blood with another slow mutant, it might arouse them at jellied blood, and they might have sex, because like that passage has always stuck with me and is just King outdoing himself with talents. I think it's one of the grossest.
It's kind of romantic. I mean, he's saving the best parts for her, so there's.
That's true. Hey, and the guy. Hey, he as Billy Madison said, what can he say? He saved the day.
Saved the day.
Halis did good. So nasty,
on that around that same area, like when they're at Blue Heaven, Dinky has a line that made me laugh so hard, especially because it's from a guy named Dinky. He goes, "How would we know? I probably know more about D cups than D lines."
Yeah,
it's just so.
He also refers to bodacious tatas.
Yes, bodacious tatas.
Can I say the butcher shop when he says that Clinton gets more pussy than a toilet seat?
God.
And then I love Mordred. I mean, just Mordred talking about his various ailments.
Oh,
yeah,
man,
he calls he talks about the brown stew in his pants.
I wrote down brown stew. He says it like several times.
And hollow farts. And then later on page 938, he talks about he gave out a victory fart, hyphenated, which I loved. But although this one was long, and smelly, it was silent. His asshole was now a broken squeeze box that could no longer make music, but only gasp.
And that's like good. I mean, that's good. I think it's good
love
writing.
it. It's great
so
writing,
like
and it is
we
so
get like
disgusting.
all the great. There's lots of shit pound cake in this. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say the part where Mordred's dick is hard when he comes out of the womb.
Oh, yeah,
that is
weird.
weird.
You read my mind.
Weird, and I don't like it. And then the scene with the woman the rich lady who drives the BMW.
Tassenbaum, Mrs. Tassenbaum. Yeah.
Tassenbaum. She says she would have shaved her bush, or if she would have taken off her panties if she had shaved her bush. Okay, fine.
I gotta be honest. I thought some of that stuff with her and Roland, like, what a weird little side story.
It's so strange. That was what I was alluding to last episode. The weird pound cake. Yeah.
Yeah, but there was some of it like that almost like it was such a weird. Like, I don't know, you could make a short film out of that. Like this weird otherworldly Clint Eastwood figure covered in scars and this like middle-aged rich woman who has forgotten what excitement is, and like them just staying the night in a hotel together, and like him and like both being there for each other when they need each other. There's something like kind of delicate and sweet about it. Although I agree, Anna, like it is crass in its way.
I felt good for her.
There was like something kind of tender about
it. When it was funny, because at first it's like, oh, they're just gonna hold each other naked because they need each other, but then it's like, no, the next day they also fucked. Like, they both get theirs.
And of course, it was great.
Oh,
it was
amazing!
Really, really good. Even though, whatever. I mean, I preferred it when I think we talked. It's not so much pound cake when he has sex with Dr. Callahan's.
Rosalita.
Rosa. I feel like it was a little that we laughed at it, but it's not. But it felt to me that felt better.
Right.
Felt better. This is just like, I don't know. I mean, I think I didn't know how to feel about Mrs. Tannenbaum.
Very odd character.
I think it's hilarious that he stresses that she's a Republican.
Well, isn't she? I was confused. Didn't she say she was liberal? But she's definitely talking like a Republican because she's super like anti Al Gore. Or am I misremembering that?
Oh no, the shop
Pretty
owner.
sure
well, I guess they were all like, yeah. I guess everybody, and I guess that tracks. I
think it's because
like
she was
rich people
wealthy.
in Maine.
That's she was from New York, but don't they imply like because she's Jewish, right? Too, because doesn't he say like Jew York or something? Tannenbaum's a German name, but I think there are a lot of anyway. But yeah, no, I felt. I mean, good for her. Like that's kind of in a way, it's like tall, dark, and handsome. Girl. Well, they say tall, dark, and ugly, but it's like I guess that's just a matter of opinion, right?
I did laugh at just because of course like Roland has to have a huge fucking dick, right? Because like she says when he put her arms around her, she gasped and stiffened, then relaxed, but very slowly. His hips pressed against her bottom and she felt considerable weight of his package, but it was apparently only comfort he had in mind. His penis was limp. I love it's like, oh my God, what a giant
even
cock.
limp. It's
but
like
it's still
11 inches. My last one I had was just John Cullum having a porno mag called Yank Me. Just a very funny name for a porno.
King wrote for a lot of porno mags, so I think he has a good
I don't think he wrote for Yank Me, sadly.
Yeah. He does I will say, like, when they do have sex and she hears the voices of everyone that's died in Roland's world calling to her, I actually thought that was like very lovely, right?
Yeah, like there's something
unsettling.
Yeah, there's like something kind of just like weird and lyrical about that whole sequence, intermixed with the crassness. Like it's a very Kingian sort of little section. Anna, what do you got?
She is a Republican.
Of course. On 46,
she's talky, meddlesome, and good looking. If you don't mind the makeup and the hairspray, and loaded with green, and a Republican.
Yeah, they're on after this is the toward the end of their time together. After they've already had sex once, this is on 46. She says, "You could stay at the apartment for a couple of days and rest up," she said. "I'd stay with you and fuck thy brains out. Do it, please." Yeah, she thought. I just thought it was like so funny.
And
like,
fuck thy brains out. Okay.
Anyway.
All right. Let's move on to our next section. Little one called King's Dominion.
There's another world out there.
I know there is.
All right, King's Dominion. This is usually where we talk about other books that are referenced. The whole book's kind of King's Dominion, but
it's everything. Like everything is King's Dominion now, right?
Yeah, I've got. I guess like the way I saw it is I kind of just pulled ones that are a little subtler, or that are I don't know, a little bit more Easter eggy. So like one I have is there's a mention of Sanko fights, like as a kind of image, and those are the death symbols that Dinky saw, like, or at least what he called them in Everything's Eventual. Roland sees them when he is outside the tower, like in his eyes, like he and there's a couple of them that are named, and they're just gobbledygook words, but like Sanko fights was one of them. But I like Googled that because I didn't remember what that was, and yeah, it was in Everything's Eventual. There's a moment on page 931 where a chapter begins with later, because there's always a later, isn't there? And that is basically the book Later.
Oh, really?
Like that's kind of the running, I don't know, narrative gimmick throughout it, is just this idea of like later. And then he comments on the idea of later. And he does that in a lot. I think like that's where that book came from, was him using that construction a lot in a lot of his other previous books. So I feel like that was just the seeds of that later book popping up there. What else do you guys have?
I had Susanna talking about her first experience with getting a period was like Harry.
Yeah.
They were throwing tampons at her and saying "plug it up," which I noticed.
I wrote that down too.
Obviously, I feel like the anagram is very reminiscent of Red Rum too.
Mm-hmm.
We mentioned Stuttering Bill, of course.
Also, Roland crushes aspirin in his mouth and enjoys the bitter taste.
Yep.
I don't know if King intends that to be something that all his
Jack
characters
Torrance,
do.
yeah.
The Shining, yeah. What is it?
There's other
Excedrin
we've called it out. We've called it out in at least one of the book. I have a memory. I can't remember what it is, but
yeah.
I have a memory. I have a memory that we've done that in at least one other book.
I do just on subtle ones.
Okay, go ahead, Fligger.
So just obviously, like, there's so many big connections, but I thought it was interesting when, is it Brian Smith, the guy that's driving the car?
Yeah.
So the songs he's listening to, the first one is Hey 19 by Steely Dan.
Yeah,
that was
that's
cool.
great.
And I was hoping there was going to be a bunch of them, but the second one is Gangster Dream 19 by Oat, Ray, and Juss. So this is actually a made-up song, which I thought was kind of interesting, because there are other songs that have 19 in the title or the subject matter. But I found on SoundCloud, someone has since recorded this song.
Oh my God, really?
I love that. Was it Dave Musson? Because he has that King themed band. That's also too, if we want to go real deep, and it's more room 2 through 7. In Christine, Steely Dan's Deacon Blues is one of the songs that starts the chapters. I think it's the teenage death songs section. And this is interesting because it's a death related, or almost a death related vehicular accident. So yeah.
Yeah. 2 mentions of Blue Chambray. Or actually, there might have been 3. I only wrote down 2. I always like to make note of those. And then there was a little Hearts in Atlantis callback where Ted says you judge the rest of them by the first one after Jake kisses the one girl, which is what he also said to Bobby about kisses. And there's also talk of Texas Instruments calculators, which I'll always remember from The Stand. I believe that was one of the only businesses in Arnett was Texas Instruments.
The calculator factory.
Everybody worked at the calculator factory. And I feel like King references them in many books. But yeah. And then there were fortune cookies in Dandelo's basement. So another It reference. Yeah. And then do I have anything else? I think that might be it.
It was almost hard to spot it in this one because it's like just fucking everything, right? Like everything is just related to King.
Oh, one other one. On page 669, they're talking about Under the Castle. But they go, what it's like down there is the labyrinth in an old Greek story where this bull monster was supposed to run. And that reminded me of Rose Matter, for the Rose Matter heads out here, where the bull in the labyrinth is a very, very big part of that story. Anything else that you guys have? Cool. All right. I think before we do final thoughts, I want to reflect on the tower a little bit and ask you guys, if you had to rank these books, how would you do it? And I know Anna and I have not revisited the first 3. You, the first 4, I think. in several years. I haven't read the first 3 in a while, but I've been on the Wizard and Glass in every other episode throughout. So I think my reviews may be a bit skewed because I'm going off my own memories, and I might like the first 3 more. They might be in different positions if I reread them. But Flieger, why don't you start, since you're the one who's probably the most refreshed with all of these? If you had to sort of rank them offhandedly, what do you think would be at the top and the bottom?
I'll say this. I'm going to save my Wind Through the Keyhole because I actually would put that above some of the first 7. But yeah, I think it's like I really enjoyed this reread. This was really cool to go through it. And at one point when he was going through the tower, he was on the 38th floor, and he was like, "Oh, that's 2 times 19." And I'm 38 now, and I read it around the age of 19, so it's fun to revisit.
Oh, interesting.
Like just being a different person, being a little more experienced, a little more battle scars, but also a little more calm and open-minded. So I thought this was such a fun adventure. It's so cool to see the IP come together. We're kind of bored with that now, right? Marvel has overdone it. Everything is let's mix and match. But this really was the first time that I've seen references outside of the universe of Stephen King, where you're having Harry Potter characters, Star Wars features, Marvel characters. Yeah. I'd never read anything quite like this at the time. So trying to put myself in that mindset, and then also thinking, would a person reading this for the first time enjoy it? I think they really would. In terms of my overall ranking, I think I have to go 4, 2, 3, 5, 1, and then I actually might put 7 above 6. That was the one I was
7's
debating.
Really low for you, huh?
Yeah, I just think the 2 through 5 is such a strong run. Book 4 is my favorite, but as we were reading it, I was even saying like 2, 3, 4, 5. I was like, this is such a great sequence. Everyone feels a little different. 6 and 7 is a lot of wrapping up of loose ends and the introduction of new loose ends.
It's a lot of story.
Yeah, but I'm interested when we do book 8, because I do think that's kind of an underrated novel. And it's like a really fun adventure. It's very stripped down.
Yeah. I love Wind Through the Keyhole, and I honestly wish that we could get more of that. I feel like there's so many stories in Roland's world. Caffrey, what do you think?
I was gonna say my final alt take though, just so that now when he goes through, and I'm sure we'll have other episodes that focus maybe on what could be on this next journey, but I thought it'd be fun if that when he goes through the door next time, that maybe Jake takes the part of Roland, right? And that instead of Stephen King, it's Joe Hill taking the place of Stephen King as like this author, and just sort of passing it down to the generations, the way that Arthur the Eld passed it down, and then Stephen Deshane passed it to Roland. It would be interesting to see it then passed to Jake, of him becoming a gunslinger or something like that. So that's all I gotta say about that.
I remember in our Stephen King cinematic universe post we did back in 2015, we cast Joe Hill as playing Stephen King. So, Caffrey, how about you? Like, what do your rankings look like?
I will, and I'll save my reasoning for final thoughts. All right, so we're going top to bottom or bottom to top?
Bottom to top.
All right, so at the bottom I have 6, Song of Susanna, then 5, Wolves of the Kala, 3, The Wastelands, 1, The Gunslinger, 2, The Drawing of the Three, 4, Wizard and Glass, and this is my favorite Dark Tower book, the Dark Tower VII.
Really?
The Dark Tower. I will explain why. My final thoughts.
Awesome. Anna, I know you haven't read them in a bit, but like offhand, what do you think?
It's funny because I want to put the Dark Tower up towards the top for parts of it.
Yeah.
Like I feel like if it was edited more, it would be number 1, just period.
Yeah.
But I think the first one drew me in, so it would be, I'm just going to go with general vibes, by the way.
Vibes are
try to rank. So I would say the ones that I like. I'm not as big a fan of Wizard and Glass as everyone else. It's weird.
Yeah.
I actually also really liked the ones that we've done, maybe just because they're further in my my memory. I liked Wolves of the Kala and Song of Susanna, and it's very doubtful people will be listening who haven't read all of them. But if you ever have a friend ask you what one should I start with, I actually might say Wolves of the Kala.
Yeah.
Like I think it's a good standalone. It pretty much is standalone. It's a self-contained adventure, and you get to meet more interesting characters, and you get a sense of what the larger kind of universe is about. Whereas I think the Gunslinger, it's just he didn't know he was going to be writing this whole universe. It's not a good introduction to the universe, really. So I remember not liking Wizard and Glass. Maybe I should go back and read it. It was
I'm
the
a
jumping
fan.
around. It's a ton of people's favorite. I know that. So I guess I'm going for vibes is Dark Tower. And then maybe Gunslinger, since it drew me in, even though I don't think it's good standalone. And then I think I put the two that I read with y'all. I remember not liking Drawing of the Three.
Yeah.
And I will save. I don't know what final thoughts I have, but I'll come up with some.
All right. So I'm similar. Like, I'm going off vibes. I'm trying to remember the way I reacted when I was younger. And so least favorite, I'd probably say the first book, Gunslinger. And then I'd probably say Song of Susanna. And then I'd probably say Drawing of the Three, which I remember not quite enjoying when I was younger. That might change because literally, like, everybody else on the podcast, aside from you, Anna, like, I'm like loves that book. But I remember really struggling with it and not being that into it. Whereas Wastelands, I loved. But then I'd probably put Wolves of the Calla, and then Dark Tower, Wastelands, and Wizard and Glass is my number one. And but I remember loving Wastelands so much when I was a kid. I don't know if that would hold up, because then I've heard that, like, just talking to you guys and Justin and Mac and everybody, I remember Drawing of the Three. I know our episode is like very much like this book fucking rules, and Wastelands, people were like, this book is a struggle. And so I wonder how my opinions would shift if I had moved back to that. But I know that I'll always love Wizard and Glass, which again is also tied in, and I talk about this on our episode. I have such intimate personal connections with that because of when I read it and what was going on in my life. And I also, so I just have this like really intense connection to it. So yeah, I don't know. That's kind of how I look back on it. And I think we can segue into final thoughts here.
Dad, can we go now?
You ready?
Yeah, we've been ready for an hour.
Okay, I'll be right there.
You said that a half hour ago. Yeah, my dad's weird. He gets like that when he's writing.
I found myself very enraptured by this book, although I think occasionally exhausted by it because it is ridiculously long. And I do genuinely feel like it is many novellas crammed together into one. And I'll never, I think like that's just the big overwhelming feeling I'm left with coming out of this, is the idea that it does feel rushed, and the meta elements ultimately for me are a distraction. That doesn't mean I don't enjoy it, but I feel like there's a sweatiness to the idea that he had to finish it and he had to reach the tower. I think it was a weight lifted off his shoulders. And it's hard for me to not look at it through this lens of the resentment and anger in the notes that he puts in the book, and then where he was in terms of his career, in terms of his life, in terms of his existential worries about legacy and death and all of these things. All of that to me really feeds into the Uber narrative, I think, of this book, which is an achievement, like such an achievement. And there's so many sections of it I love, as I detailed here, but there is always going to feel to me that this is not the book that he's going to be remembered for, which I think he perhaps at the time felt that was the case. The Dark Tower to me is kind of a side quest in the Stephen King journey. It's not one you need to take, in my opinion. I don't think it's his best writing. I think it's a lot. There's so much good stuff. Like, I mean, I say that, but then Wizard and Glass, I've often said it was my favorite Stephen King book of all time. So it is complicated, but the thing is, I'd probably love that book even if it just existed on its own, because it is sort of a contained story. But yeah, I'm a little melancholy to be done with this journey, and that's why I'm definitely going to be on the Wind Through the Keyhole episode when we get there, because I do actually want to spend more time with these characters, and I was left with that. So I don't know. It's if I have to give it a nose ranking, I guess I'd probably go. I don't know. See, it's really hard because it's like such an ambitious endeavor. I'm gonna go 3.5 bright red Pennywise clown noses, because there's a brilliant book that's buried inside this, or there's like 6 brilliant books that are broken out of this. And I wish they weren't all crammed together like so much trash. Trash, I shouldn't say. I guess bubblegum. Yeah, Caffrey, give us hit me with your why this is the best Dark Tower book.
It goes back to what I said before. I think for me, it's just the sort of ultimate statement on who Stephen King was at that time. Now, that for some people might not make it a good or satisfying novel, but for me, with an artist that I've studied and loved for pretty much most of my life at this point, I feel like even more so than on writing, I feel like there's no better insight into what he does. And that comes with the flaws, right? And I find the flaws fascinating because I find Stephen King fascinating.
Yeah.
And also to what Flieger was saying, I mean, it is and these are not my favorite Stephen King books ever. I think he went on after this to write books that are better than all the Dark Tower books, for real. But it is such a unique fantasy series because it's not thought out, which both results in its strengths and its weaknesses. And I can't think of anything else like that. And look, uniqueness always gets points for me with any art that I consume. And I think it is perfect in its imperfections. And I do think it's the only way the Dark Tower could have ended. However, whether you have that final coda, it is going to vary, depending on your taste. So I think you could chop it off. The book says one thing, you have it on there. The book says something else. 5 bright red Pennywise or Dandelo clown noses for me, and I'll be dropping that on Goodreads, that old little rating, in just a bit.
Love it. Anna,
I think that this is a side quest too. I like that metaphor for it, especially given its fantasy, right? I would be fascinated to talk to people who are Dark Tower heads, but not fans of Stephen King. They must exist. And I think that would be really interesting because I do think it's a different experience. I mean, there's some King ticks that show up throughout this, and it's recognizably King's writing, but it feels like it's an exploration of different stuff, right? Like, even in his books about authors who live in Maine, it doesn't seem as much of an exploration of like what it means to be a writer and what is it to create, and should I be writing this? You know what I mean? Like, even when he's like has all these like cutouts for himself in his novels, it doesn't feel as self-referential.
Yeah.
Weirdly. I mean, that said, I didn't that said, I enjoyed this journey, with y'all and rereading these things. So I think 3 and a half bright red.
Let's round up 3.5.
Okay, 3.5.
Dandelos.
And I would recommend this if you're a Stephen King fan, like, go ahead. You're going to get something out of this. Like, this will add something to it will add to your enjoyment of the other books. But it's not something I can't recommend it just like kind of, unless you like fantasy. I don't know if I would recommend it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's like anchovy pizza.
It is. It's one of those things, like, I'd have to know the person before I recommended it, like, I'd have to be like, you might like, I think you'd like it. You would like it. But I don't know if I could just go, everybody would like this. This is totally something that everyone would love.
Flieger, take us out.
Okay, well, just starting broad before I narrow it down to this specific book. But as I was mentioned earlier in other pods, so the Dark Tower series, the Dune series, and Song of Ice and Fire are like my favorite sort of like book series of like 7 novels, right? And I guess the Dune might be 6, but the Dune final book is 30,000 years after the first book. So there's some disconnect there in that story. George R. R. Martin, as we mentioned, has not finished the final 2 of his book. But Stephen King has managed to do what a lot of people can't do, and is he told a story from start to finish that, whether you disagree with some of the details, I think is ultimately pretty satisfying. I think back to the first time I read this. Caffrey, thanks a lot, got me the first book, The Gunslinger. I read those straight through. I immediately read The Stand and It while traveling abroad. And this was pre-smartphone, so I didn't really have internet. There was just downtime of me reading these books and just getting so into them and just loving that experience. So it's cool almost 19 years later to be with you guys and going through. And, it's there's been parts that I didn't like as much, but sometimes when you guys share your thoughts, I'm like, yeah, that's actually a really good point, and keep the mind open for that. I think this specific novel, yeah, I mean, you gotta, it's a nice little, it's a nice period at the end. Well, I guess maybe a semicolon would be better for Stephen King because we have some stories that follow. I would have to give this a 3.5. It's not my favorite in the journey, but I think it's a pretty satisfying ending in a lot of ways. And I think it's just a great accomplishment to be able to achieve such an overarching literary universe from one man. You know, this is not Marvel where this guy wrote this comic and this guy wrote that, and this is one person doing it. And I just think that's so impressive, and it just leaves me in awe of him. So 3.5 for this one. But there were a few 5-baggers in this series, I should say.
Yeah, amazing. We did it. Let's do some plugs and let's go take a nap. So Anna, what's up at Space the Nation?
Space the Nation, we are doing cold sci-fi winter. Thematically, over the winter, we're doing Thing, Snowpiercer, Empire Strikes Back, and we just decided we're going to do Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Oh, nice.
Which I'm very excited about because that's probably my first genre love. You know,
Yeah.
I think I read that in The Hobbit very early on. Those are 2 books that probably got me where I am today. And then I also wanted to say I have a writing workshop that people can take if they want to. AnnaMarieCox.com/third story. It's intended for people, the way that I describe it is with a before and after. You don't have to want to be a writer, but if you've gone through something, the class draws from a therapeutic technique called focused expressive writing. And it tends to be something that people leave feeling like they did something, like they got to the end of a narrative, or they created a narrative about their life that they're pleased about. So
nice.
Take that.
Check it out. Caffrey, what's up with Halloweenies?
Halloweenies. Well, we just announced our 6th season, which is Child's Play. A little bit of a pivot. We were going to do something else, and we decided last moment to do that. Chucky's hot right now, and we are big fans of the series that was on. What's it actually on? Sci-Fi? I watch it on Hulu, but I'm not sure.
I watch it on Peacock.
Yeah. But yeah, so that is what's going on. We're gonna take a little bit of a break, obviously. I think the plans to start in January, but don't quote me on that. I'm so bad with timelines on both podcasts. So yeah, keep a lookout. Sorry, Jack. Chucky's back. So here we go.
Love Chucky. Fleeger, any teases for an upcoming Dark Tower?
All I can say is that it's going to be poetic. So we're all fans, and I think it's fun because we go back and forth between spoilers and no spoilers, but we're pretty much, I don't know, the collars are off here, so the big dogs are going to run wild.
Yeah,
now we can talk about anything we want, spoilerific. So look forward to that. It'll be coming out soon. Check your socials.
Cool. Yeah, and we're gearing up for next year at Losers Club. We're kicking things off for the sports fans. We're talking about Faithful with Stuart Onan and Stephen King talking baseball. So that's going to be a fun little pivot, I think, for the podcast a little bit. Maybe a palate cleanser after the Dark Tower is exploring maybe a less discussed side of King, which is his sports writing. So lots of other fun things coming up. Mel and I are coming back with our author series. We've got some interviews lined up and many books. I mean, I think like the next one after Faithful is Colorado Kid. So it's coming after the Dark Tower. We're like easing into some lesser known books, but
some weird King books, not weird, but like, yeah.
But next year we are going to get to Under the Dome. We're going to get to Duma Key, and we're going to get to 11/22/63. So those are big books next year. And also Holly's coming out. So we're going to be, doing coverage around that as well. And so lots of exciting stuff coming out. And, plenty of stuff in the feed now. I'm not going to go through it all, but this was a blast, everyone. I can't thank you guys enough for being on these 3 books with me.
It's crazy.
We did it. I know, and I'm really, really proud of the content that we put out. I think it's good, and it'll stand the test of time, much like Stephen King's Dark Tower series. So let's sign off with a long days and
pleasant nights.
Pleasant nights. Bye, y'all.
I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. But you want somebody to treat you good.
This is the end of our show. For now. We hope you enjoyed this production. If you like our programming, consider searching for other bloody disgusting podcasts. such as Creepy, Horror Queers, The Boo Crew, SCP Archives, Nightlight, Margaret's Garden, and more.